And that's an interesting question to ask people at different points in their life. But I was really surprised. I think this gentleman was probably in his 60s. Maybe he could have been even in his early 70s. And so he unmuted himself and he wanted to talk about it. And the answer he gave actually was one of the most honest, truthful, self-deprecating answers I'd ever heard. He said that throughout his entire life, he'd focused all of his energies effectively on being famous. And so I sort of asked him, for the sake of all the listeners, I said, so when you were in your 30s, when you were in your 20s, what did you focus on? He goes, being famous. And I said, so how did that manifest itself? He was buying leads. He was talking about his success. He was peacocking all over his community. He was peacock pooping on all of his competitors. Yeah. Basically he was just in it to essentially aggrandize his ego, to make himself feel good. Then I said, okay, so let's move forward 10 years. And he basically said the same thing. But at that point he added a team, and now the team was all over the news, and he was one of the top agents in his marketplace and with his brokerage and his franchise and all these things. Had all of a sudden they were getting bigger and bigger because he had this team and this staff that was around him. And even though he wasn't making any real profit, remember the question was, if you have to choose between rich and being famous, which do you choose? And then in the 40s, and he said the same thing. And I asked him, so what changed in his 50s? And I thought for sure he was going to say, well, I changed and I found, the whole point of being in business, which is to make a profit. With that profit, I reinvest into things that produce passive income for me. But he said he'd never changed. He said, and this is the reason I think he was probably in his 60s, he said that it wasn't until the last couple of years that he had realized that he had been chasing the wrong rabbit his entire life. He had been chasing fame. And he said, and this is where he kind of took over this clubhouse, he said he wished he would have been smart enough, or wished he'd have been lucky enough to run into somebody that had basically, grabbed him upside the head and said, you're chasing the wrong rabbit. And he said he wished he would have made different decisions, especially at this point in his life. And so that's kind of a fascinating thing that does tie into the whole concept of, time and money. Because you think when you're young, you can basically chase the fame rabbit, and you think that you will have time to make it up on the financial side. You think that you can sacrifice profit from your business because you essentially take time for granted. You think you'll have time to make it up. But sometimes you don't. You end up like that guy when you basically chase the wrong rabbit for too long. So I'll challenge all of you to realize the fact that even, some of you are having incredibly successful years. Maybe you had incredibly successful 2 or 3 years. And maybe you'll have everything's going to be fantastic. Every year is going to be better over the one to the other. But if you're not actually proactively, consciously, consistently pulling your, creating your business around the idea of making profit of 20, 30, 40, 50%, and that 20% would be only if you're selling hundreds of millions of dollars or making like 10, 20, 30 million in commission, then you can run lower margins. But if you're somebody who's running less than $1 million, if you're not in total GCI per year, if you're not making at least a 70%, maybe 75% profit before personal expenses and taxes, you're doing something wrong. You're overspending. You're buying your business. You've been fooled into thinking that fame's going to create more transactions. I don't doubt that. Sometimes that does work. You can buy your business until the cows come home, but you won't have anything to show for it. Oh, you'll get a plaque, you'll get an award, you'll get a home sale. You might have your franchise give you another, give you the double diamond ruby, whatever award. But you don't have any money in the bank. You don't have any net worth. So I'll challenge all of you to don't benchmark yourself against the attention and the recognition you get from other people. You benchmark your success and your forward momentum by the amount of how much you increase your, service people and all that. So let's not start getting off on the deep end with my message here. Just stay focused. As a business owner, your job is to serve people, help people make money, and make profit. And if you're not increasing your net worth every year by a meaningful amount, you're doing something wrong. And that's really what should be taught in real estate school. That should be what's taught in every business school.
That's it. So speaking of time spent is gone forever. How much minimum wage work are you filling your days with? Are you doing work theater or are you being dollar productive? This is something that I see with coaching clients.
Oh, you think?
They're like all the time. They say that they want to have a higher level of production. They claim that their goals are important to them. And yet, how do they spend their time? Because you see, these things are important. You got to keep your deals together. You got to put out those fires. And that also is, creative avoidance on some level. When you take too long to do it, you let it stretch out days, weeks, months, instead of being dollar productive with your actual schedule, which again, you'll get from the treasure map.
But Julie, they don't spend most of their time keeping their deals together.
They look like they are.
They spend most of their time doing, as you said, work theater.
Right.
So what's work theater?
It's all of the stuff that's kind of important but isn't mission critical and isn't dollar productive.
Spending too much time on your CRM, spending too much time on your brand, your logo, trying to think about your team culture, trying to build your team logo, your team, anything to do with the word team. Doing all that stuff is work theater. Trying to be the master of some sort of social networking outlet. Trying to do anything other than being proactive with your lead generation to put